Good morning or good evening, depending on whatever time and place you're watching this. I hope you're as excited as I am. We as the Innovation Law Club Africa aim to highlight transformative work and individuals pioneering them. So in this series where we're doing these fireside chats, my guest tonight is no exception. She has worked for over 14 years in the technology field from an executive search and recruitment perspective in the UK as well as in Africa. She founded the Women in Tech South Africa chapter, which is a non-profit organization that helps small women and girls embrace technology, and it does its part to close that digital gender gap. She has a BSc degree in human science, which is inclusive of psychology, physiology, genetics, nutrition. She's on the advisory board. She's an advisory board member to the African Chamber of Digital Commerce. My guest is a speaker, moderator, and advocate for diversity and inclusion. So with a warm welcome, I would like to introduce you to the forerunner, that is Melissa Slaymaker. Melissa, thank you so much for participating in this session. We are absolutely thrilled to have you, and our viewers can't wait to meet you.
Thank you, Ethan, for that lovely, warm introduction. I feel really humbled and honored to be here to share my story with you. I'm normally the one doing the moderating or interviewing industry leaders, and I feel very blessed to that you've thought of me today, and to hopefully I can help inspire or share some insights to help more women, girls, and anyone that is positive or pro diversity to really give them some food for thought or nuggets today. So thank you for having me.
No problem. It's a mouthful of a bio. You have such wide and interesting background, which we will get to. Most of our viewers probably already know you, but in your own words, as they say from the horse's mouth, how would you describe Melissa to us?
Well, I am, first of all, a mother of two children. I think it's important to mention that because I think that comes with its own challenges and own life experience. I worked in technology, as you've mentioned, from an executive search or recruitment perspective. And I'm really passionate about technology. I'm passionate about people, and I love connecting people. So I feel like I'm living my purpose. It didn't start out like that. I actually studied a science degree, and I wanted to be working in a laboratory with a white coat and solve big problems like diabetes and all of those kind of things. I wanted to be a scientist. And I found that scientists don't like talking. And unfortunately I do. So I found the lab environment wasn't for me. So I had to think of something else to do. And I stumbled, as most people that work in my industry, you don't really study to become a recruiter or work as a headhunter. You kind of, it finds you rather than you find it. And interestingly enough, when I speak to a lot of women that work in technology, they don't always start off in that industry or working. You don't ever think, oh, I'm going to be an IT director of a company, but it's somehow life experience and your path kind of is sometimes predetermined, maybe, I don't know, but you follow a path and then you kind of think, wow, actually I never thought of this, but this is now what I think I'm meant to do. And that's really what happened to me. So I love technology, like I've mentioned. I like the fast-paced, innovative things that are constantly changing. So I'm always keeping myself up to date with the latest trends, as you would need to do. And I love working with people, especially people that want to start their own companies or create something new, be innovative or transform things. And I find, that's so for me, my value add really comes from my passion for people and my passion to help people. And I can do that through my recruitment career, but then also through my non-for-profit, which is Women in Tech. So so that's me in a nutshell.
No, thank you for that. And I'll be honest, as I was reading through your bio, the thing that struck me the most is your academic background. It's in human science. And so you would expect, your career path to be down a psychologist or a nutritionist along those lines. So it really fascinates me. What drew you to technology, as you mentioned, the fast pace world that it is, the constant innovation and having to keep up with that innovation and having to pioneer, as you have so often done in your field and in your career. But maybe just talk us through then what a typical day is for an executive search and recruitment specialist like yourself.
So I work across Africa, and I focus on the payments and fintech space at the moment. So alone in that sector, there's so many changes, so many startups. So a day-to-day for me would be looking, first of all, doing research. I have alerts that come up in newspapers, and I'm very kind of aware of what's going on in the market, which companies have been recently received funding, or which companies are looking to merge or partner with other companies. So I'm always aware of what the industry is doing. So I spend probably an hour a day on literally just knowing my markets. And then following up on emails. A lot of my time is spent in front of my computer. So I do spend a lot of time on the phone and researching, and then obviously speaking to some awesome candidates. I also help people with their CVs give them professional looking CVs. I help them with their LinkedIn profile. So a lot of time is spent consulting with people to help them give the best impression of themselves, and helping them find job opportunities, and using my network to not only help people find jobs, but help companies be aware of what the trends are, what skills are going to be needed, looking at trend setting things, information sharing. So I'm involved with networking and working in my sector, being a specialist. I think if you're working in recruitment, you have to be you live and breathe what you do. So you don't work 9 to 5 working day, or like a 8 to 6 or whatever. It's really a constant, almost 24-hour constant job. Sometimes I'll work till late at night, but I love what I do. So I don't see it as a job. I see it as like my purpose. So there you are.
It almost becomes like a lifestyle, and it sounds packed. It sounds interesting though, and it sounds like different days. No 2 days that are the same. So I guess you're someone that I would need to talk to after this fireside chat. And if you are listening in, Melissa is the person that you need to be getting engaged with regarding making sure that your profiles are up to date and are standard. So that's a good one for our viewers there. But also just speaking on this before we move on, just let us know what essential qualities and qualifications do you look out for in recommending or making a hire for an executive position in a tech company?
So it's difficult to answer the question because we work with so many different clients, right? So sometimes if you're working for a corporate, like a bank or insurance company or big firm, they really, I see them valuing education a lot. So they'll look for people with an MBA, or they'll look for people with a master's degree or some formal education. But saying that, we also work with some small innovative fintech startups where that's really not important. For them, experience is way more important than a piece of paper or degree, right? So they want to see that you've penetrated a market and you've networked and you've built something and you've had that entrepreneurial flair. So it really depends on which industry or company that you're dealing with. So we would normally just match, appropriate candidates with appropriate companies. So you take into consideration their company culture. Do they want someone who's going to, want to wear jeans to work, or do they want someone who's going to wear a suit to work? So it really is a culture thing. It's difficult to say in terms of qualifications, but I think any education is always going to be of great value to your profile, no matter what industry. So I would always say, look, even if you don't want to work for corporate, still do your qualifications, because you'll always have that to show for it. No one can take your education away from you. So, but I think in terms of what we normally look for is people that have got a stable career. So if you have been, in a career for, 6 months and then job hopped a lot, that's always a red flag. So try and keep your career stable. Don't move around too much. That's always something that we pick up on quickly. But from a qualification point of view, I think it's, definitely if you're going into technology, we look at, whether you've done, an IT degree or computer science degree, or have you followed up with a master's or honors, or any extra certifications. Obviously in our industry, it changes a lot. So there's always things that needs updating. But IT is so varied. So it really depends on which area you're going into. So it's difficult to answer specifically which qualifications, because there's so many, depending on which area you're going into, whether it's software or infrastructure or cloud or, yeah.
How then, I guess, as a follow-on on that, how then do you balance or manage, rather, let me put it as this, have you been able to balance and manage issues based on diversity or inclusion and merit? So how do you balance those three?
That's a very good question, because we find that if you look at degrees in general, in technology or engineering, there's already a gap in the women coming into that sector from high schools, and it goes further back than that. So even when I was at high school, for instance, we had to choose between technical drawings and home economics, and the girls did home economics and the boys did technical drawings. And then when you go to university and you want to do an engineering degree, you already need to have technical drawings 4 years of experience with, and you're starting off kind of with a gap, right? So the gap begins way before university. And that is a challenge that women in tech is definitely aware of, and we are trying to address. So to manage that, this one of the reasons I got involved with women in tech was because we saw in recruitment that there was this gap, right, in finding women for our roles that we try to fill. So to answer your question with regards to this gap in education, is by promoting it at a young age. And we need to get girls excited about IT, engineering, and all the fourth industrial revolution topics from a young age, even before high school. So the idea of women in tech is to align ourselves with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These include education, entrepreneurialism, social inclusion, science and innovation, and diversity, right? So diversity starts from educating from a young age. So by getting the whole culture ready from a young age, getting girls excited about careers in technology, it really will help bridge this gap. But the gap's already there and it's getting worse. It's not getting better. That's the scary part. And as you go up into leadership roles within technology, the gap even increases more. So there's no role or not enough role models and women in leadership to inspire other women to go into those career fields. So it really is a huge problem. And yeah, I hope that answers your question. Or
No, it does. It does. And I think it also highlights just how complex this issue is. If we're talking about, diversity, and we're talking also now about on the flip side of it, or rather what works in conjunction with it, which is the merit. You have to merit the position, but you also have to create an environment whereby previously disadvantaged groups can grow into those roles. And it includes having role models, as you say. So I'm glad that you actually jump on that point, because what I was interested to know from you is where Africa can improve on. And you've kind of like given us a hint already in terms of the development goals and the likes, and the certain sectors probably that we are lacking in and may need improvement in. So I guess maybe if I can ask you this, given that you have experience in Africa, are there certain limitations that you find are a pattern in African countries, or as in, is there a trend, or there specific, or it's the specific limitations in specific countries, and it's not a one size fit all kind of situation when it comes to the problems that we face here in Africa?
Look, I found just from being involved with Women in Tech, which is a global movement, we've got chapters in over 20 countries and over, I think, 52,000 members already. So there's a lot of similarities, which was kind of, wow, okay, these other countries have similar problems. But I think in Africa, those problems are accelerated and almost amplified because of the lack of infrastructure, the real gaps between in poverty. So if you're looking at rural areas, you can't simply go to a rural area and say, here's an online course, just educate yourself, here's a laptop, go. It doesn't work like that. You have to give people a safe environment, infrastructure. You have to build places where there's connectivity, get them devices. So it starts really from not just, okay, we've got all this free internet access to education, or just to give to people, but it really stems from, right, so look at the real social economic problems, and I think in Africa there really is the need, because there's such a big youth amount of youth in Africa, so that this problem must be seen as an opportunity. If we can educate all the youth now, then as a continent you're going to uplift the whole continent, right? So the whole the problem of infrastructure, the problem of expensive data and connectivity, the problem of getting more devices that are distributed to areas where they need it, and also be deemed safe. It is a real problem. So what we're doing is we're working in conjunction with other NPOs and organizations that are in those rural areas, helping them with funding, building infrastructure. An example, for instance, is Hillsong Church has got an information or iHub, and they're building buildings where students can go and get certifications through Pearson's. We're also working with Ivy Online. They're a Cambridge University education company that through Women in Tech, they've already given us 30% discount. So if you go through Women in Tech, you can get discounts, and we're working on future bursaries and scholarships for more students to get online education and good quality international standards education. But again, we need funding. I think Africa needs more investment. We need the funding to go to the right places where it's needed. We need it to be managed, project managed, so that people get followed up. Not only do they get qualifications, they then have jobs to go to, or internships to go to, or anything. So it's a whole process. It's not just education. Education doesn't stop there. It's also job readiness and entrepreneurialism. So it's a very complex problem. And I've been honored to be part of the advisory board, as you mentioned, for the Africa Chamber of Digital Commerce. And that organization has already showed promise where countries such as America and Africa can work together to create programs where they can create more remote jobs. So there's so many opportunities. We just need to all work together. And the power of the collective is amazing. The power of the collective is something I've witnessed. And yeah, I think there's hope, right?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned very important things, right? So when I hear you speak, I'm hearing that women in tech is doing a lot to close that gender gap. But how, and I know you mentioned things like infrastructure problems, but then how have you managed to alleviate some of these problems, or maybe even, if I can put it this way, how are you closing that gap? And are you actually closing that gap? And if you are, how are you doing that? How is it going so far as an organization, if I can ask that?
So our mission for Women in Tech is to help empower 5 million women and girls by 2030. That's our collective mission internationally. The way that we move the needle and the way we actually drive impact and create that change is through programs. We actually, in South Africa, next week we're kicking off a program in partnership with Sanlam and also the University of the Western Cape called This Is Me. And it's an empowerment program to create confidence building workshops, presentation skills training, job readiness training for students in their final year moving into the corporate world. So that's, I mean, we have to we have to start somewhere. So I think by doing physical programs, by helping people get education, Women in Tech have also partnered internationally with Microsoft, IBM, and Cisco to give access to their online certification, which are internationally renowned certifications. So again, trying to get remote access to education, certification, and online or remote work. So that is part of what we do. We also have got a very tight network and growing network of investors, accelerators, and like angel investors, so that they can help invest in female-founded entrepreneurs and CEOs. So we regularly have picture project competitions. We've got one coming up this year in South Africa in June. And then there's always picture project competitions internationally going on around the globe. So by investing, by educating, by creating role model masterclasses and giving real access to a network of collaboration, that really is how we do it. Is and getting funding and getting education to young girls from the beginning, and training them up throughout the whole career life cycle, right up to where they become a mentor. So that's how we do it.
I'm glad to hear that, and I'll say maybe my last question specifically on gender equality, because it is, as you can probably tell, something that I am passionate about, and I can see that you are too. But particularly if you look at South Africa, I've noticed that there are certain patterns. There are also certain elements, for example, like cultural elements that render women excluded in these kind of conversations and these kind of fields and careers. Just going on the internet, as you were mentioning, for women can be a cultural barrier. There are cultural barriers to that too, besides your more technical things, probably like the cost of a device and etc. So again, it's something that I am passionate about, and I'm glad to hear all these ideas and initiatives that are going around and being pioneered by people such as yourself to kind of close that gap. So again, my hats off to you and the different hats and organizations that you sit in that are helping to alleviate this. But again, I know I haven't given the question, but it's because for a long time, education of girls and women, particularly also, if you're looking at the participation in political and economic life, has been largely male-centered and centric. So over the past decade, there have been victories for women, I think we can say, globally. There have been many firsts. One worth mentioning is Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who is now the Director General of the World Trade Organization, making her the first woman in history, also the first African to be appointed to that position. So although the gap is closing, it must be said that the journey is still far from over, and women continue to be underrepresented in the fields of science, technology, engineering, mathematics, representing only slightly above 35% of the world STEM graduates, according to the UN. So you can already see that there is a problem there. But I actually want to move. Yes.
The problem is getting bigger. Like I said, it's 35% graduates, but from that, only about 24% of them actually get jobs in IT. And then if you look at the Forbes 500 CEOs, only 5% of those are women. So the gap just literally increases as you progress in your career. And there's, I mean, it's a long journey. There's a lot to do, and you're correct by saying that, you know, we still have a lot of work to do. But we need more collaboration amongst organizations, and keep on to, you know, being aware of it is great, but it's not enough. You have to actually do something about it.
Looking towards the future, if I can put it that way, what does the future you envision for women in technology look like?
Well, I hope that it will be a future where machine learning, AI, and coding is done in a diverse way, because at the moment, our future is being developed by unbiased society, which is scary. So I'm hoping that in the future, I don't know if you've seen on Netflix, there's a program called Coding Bias. And it addresses the concern that, you know, our future is really not going to be our own if we don't actually do about it right now. And it's going to be a future that, you know, is not going to represent the whole diverse world that we are, you know, currently representing. So it's for me, I'm hoping that there will be a plethora of all, when we talk about diversity, not just women, but diversity of religion, of age, of race, of you know, disability. So you know, whether, you know, the your sexual orientation, or all diversity is important. So yes, we are women in tech, and we obviously want, you know, to focus on gender diversity, but we really are spokespeople for diversity and inclusion across all sectors. And that's the future I want to see, is where all diversity is being represented equally.
Again, thank you so much for that. And I guess we have to thank again for you choosing to come down this path, because it takes more like you who take this path down here. And I know you're recognized internationally. I know you're recognized locally for the work that you do. And I know you also, as we have said, you've pioneered the South African Women in Tech chapter. You are on the advisory board of African Chamber for Digital Commerce, as also we've talked on. You are the director of the strategic business development for talent in the cloud. And one thing that all of these bodies have in common is technology. And it's inevitable at this point. At one point, you mentioned how it's key that women are educated and are getting more access to this kind of education where we're talking about 4IR. It's inevitable at this point in time, and we have to get to a place whereby we are aware, but also, as you've mentioned, the access that we give should be substantial. So it's not just you have internet, but it's you have internet and it's in your mother tongue, or you have internet and it's affordable. You have the internet and. So making sure that it's substantial, I think, is an important part of this whole conversation. And again, listening and hearing and seeing what you are doing also inspires. And I hope the viewers are being inspired to push on and dream on as well as they're listening. But I'll get to a question that is also burning on me. And it's on a more general note. As we know, we'll take it as back as 2011, the International Monetary Fund, they quoted the African Development Bank, and in that they were asserting that by 2060, the number of middle-class Africans is projected to grow to 1.1 billion, I think, which is 42% of the African population. So this translates to a healthy projection and higher potentials for the African talent pool, which should excite you and should excite all of us. So I guess, how do you see the space for African executive talents growing in this decade? And just as an ancillary to that, do you think that the hype, if I can quote unquote the hype, put it that way, will match the reality?
Well, I think that definitely Africa diaspora, if we talk about people coming back to Africa, there's been an increase on actual people coming back to their home countries. We're bringing experience from America, the UK, etc. And there's been a lot of increase in startups and entrepreneurs in Africa, which gives you that hope that there will be more executives in the African space. And we've seen increased investment. If you look at the UK-Africa trade agreements, there's a lot of eyes on Africa, a lot of emerging technologies and emerging markets that we are aware of as recruiters, basically being contacted by international organizations saying, look, we want to have a piece of the action. We want to gain market share of this emerging market. So the future looks positive. I think I'm an ever the optimist. So, but I think it just needs to be managed, and I hope that the potential's there. I just hope that everyone collaborates and really embraces this opportunity with the right mindset. Being kind, looking at not just in it for themselves, but looking at empowering others around them and working together for the better of humankind and the planet. If you want to take it that far, I really hope that that there's real potential here to look at where other countries might not have had the best journeys, leapfrogging their mistakes and actually getting to our destination in a much better, safer way. So I think if that answers your question around, do you think that there'll be more kind of opportunities for executives?
I think a keyword that you mentioned, which I personally love, is leapfrog, because for so long Africa has been at the backburn. And I think there is an opportunity here to leapfrog, right? We can go deeper into it and talk about how Africa in general is built less on legacy sectors. So that basically means like Africa can easily adjust if we really put our minds to it. We don't have your huge plants that will take us decades to deconstruct and change into something more tech savvy or something like that. So there are opportunities. As much as Africa has struggled and has been at the back of the chain, there are opportunities for us to leapfrog, and I love that. It actually reminds me, also just speaking on what we've been talking about today, on a quote that I heard, and it says it's better to build boys than to repair men. And it speaks to a lot of what you've been talking about in terms of making sure that when we educate and when we create infrastructures, we're creating for that small girl. We're creating for that small girl in Soweto. We're creating for that small boy in Krugersdorp, whatever analogy or whatever township you may want to name. But we're creating opportunities and access to at the very base of this problem. So I would like to move it on to the question on just with you finding this job that you say, you know, fulfills you, and well, you say it doesn't feel like a job. It's more of something that just oozes out of you and it comes naturally. But let us know when you're not doing all these great things, and what do you do then to unwind?
Oh, to unwind, so that's easy. I love the outdoors, so I'm always taking my children glamping or camping. I say glamping because I like the sort of the middle ground between roughing it and being, you know,
right there with you.
So I like the outdoors. So we like hiking. We live in Cape Town, so we are spoiled for choice with beautiful sceneries, wine farms, Table Mountain, beaches. So I'm very much an outdoor person. When I have the opportunity, I'm always taking the kids on picnics and just being outdoors. So when I can, so it's very much a balance between being in front of my computer working all the time and attending to the kids and just enjoying nature and being, you know, just socializing with friends and all of that. So, but definitely being a very much an adventurous person. I've got a huge bucket list that I'm working on getting through. Yeah, so that's what I do, yeah.
I'm right there with you when it comes to glamping. I want a comfortable bed, but I also want to be close to the outdoors and experience all the beautiful things that nature has to offer. Melissa Slaymaker, it has been wonderful, wonderful, wonderful to talk to you and get more sense into what you do, and you know, what are the problems that are there, and also what are the solutions that we can work towards. So I've learned a lot. I hope our viewers have been taking down notes, because these are important conversations that we should be having, and that we should be furthering. So again, thank you so much for choosing to participate, and just honoring us with your knowledge.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for having me. I hope that I maybe helped one person. If you know, that would be great. But if anyone wants to reach out to me directly, they can please do so through LinkedIn. I'm always happy to engage and help where I can, or at least connect people to the right people. If I'm not that, if I can't help, I'll know someone. So yes, so thank you very much for having me.